Hey YouTube, today's video is about music composition using MIDI patterns. A couple of years ago I was looking for a device to replace my MMT8, which was a MIDI sequencer that was real popular in the 90s. It's no longer made, and so my search brought to me something called the MV8800 by Roland. And it's way more than a MIDI sequencer. This is not really a tutorial about how to use the MV8800. I've got lots of videos about how to do that. This one is really about just showing you how you can use MIDI sequencing to build your songs. Because the MV is more than a sequencer, it's actually got some sound processing, some sound modules built into it. It can do like drum pads and pianos. You can trigger all of your sounds from the keyboard. It doesn't come with it, not supplied, just like batteries. And the pads are also used for recording MIDI information as well. There are a lot of workstations out there that will record MIDI and audio. The MV8800 is no exception. This is what is called song mode, and it's used for just straight recording. You just record your track until from the beginning of the song till the end of the song. There's another mode which is called pattern mode. Pattern mode allows you to capture pieces of your music or your musical ideas into discrete little chunks that you can build into a song. For musicians, you may think of these as measures or phrases. For hip-hoppers, you may consider these loops or audio phrases. And the MV8800 allows you to record in what's called pattern mode. And in pattern mode, you do exactly what I just said, is you can record little pieces. In my case, I've created an intro, and that consists of 17 bars. I did a couple of verses that consist of 4 bars, and chorus, bridge, an outro of 16 bars, and some transitional phrases that I can use to glue different ideas together. And that's kind of the way that I go about structuring my songs a lot of the times. I've assigned the intro to this pad. I got verse 1, verse 2, chorus 1, chorus 2, transition 1, transition 2, bridge, outro. Now when I crafted my intro, I started out to make it sound kind of mysterious. So I use one of my favorite instruments on the MV. It is the Tron Choir. You can see I've got it panned a little bit to the right. It's got that nice mysterious sound. It responds pretty nicely to aftertouch. And I've also got a lot of reverb put on it and a little bit of chorus on it. And you can see that the reverb is at 127. Of course it's at 14. I'm also sending it through aux 2, and I'm also doing something with the voices. I'm reserving at least 2 voices so that those voices don't get cut out as other sounds get added to the sound buffer. One of the things about sound buffers is when you're dealing with an instrument that plays sampled sounds, the sound buffer can get full. There's only so much that can be pumped into it and played at the same time while preserving effects and being able to do certain things, keeping the timing. And so what these instruments tend to do is when the sound buffer kind of gets overloaded, then it throws out sounds that are no longer being used, and sometimes it throws out sounds that are still being used, and so you sort of get like this clicking or popping sound that occurs. And so what the voice reserve of 2 here says, that I'm always going to have at least 2 sounds always playing, regardless of what happens to the sound buffer. Sometimes you'll have a recording that you would like to modify, but for the most part it's very close to what you want, and in those cases sometimes it's better to just go into the event list and edit them. I'm going to let you hear what I've got. Now let me put it on solo. You hear there's actually a 3rd note in there, so that note needs to be brought out a little bit. And the cool thing about MIDI is you can edit that type of thing. When you go into the event list, you can see, as if you've listened to my video about MIDI and how to deal with MIDI, you can see that the velocity for the first note was 43, 54, and then the last one was at 19. So I'm going to just dial that up. I can use the little dial over here and dial it up to, well, let's say, I think it's going to be softer. So let's see what it sounds like. Okay, that's a little bit too loud, so I'll turn it down a little bit more. And down just a hair more. Alright, now let's see how that sounds. Okay, it's not complete until you've actually tested it out with the rest due to sound buffer complications. Okay, came through. Here's a technique I use with the intro. I had a sort of like this free-flowing part in mind that just kind of didn't necessarily follow any particular rhythm, but eventually winds up in a rhythm. And I've got 17 bars in order to do that, and you know, move from the free-flowing into a more rhythmic groove. And so what I did was I recorded the freeform part first. All of this stuff that you're hearing right now was all done kind of freeform and kind of playing each part kind of playing off of each other. Then I threw in a little bit of kick, and I recorded this kick by itself, and I used a metronome. And then there are a few other things that I did. I went back and I started adding in a bass line, and the bass line basically started to catch up with the timing of the kick. You can see it's kind of starting to catch up to right exactly on the measure. Now starts right on 1. Okay, and so that kind of gives the feeling like all of a sudden things are starting to come together in terms of the timing.